So good afternoon, everyone. This is Sejal Gupta from CPO Innovation, your host for today's webcast on digitization of procurement is a necessity and not the luxury. This webcast is in partnership with MavenVista's Technology Private Limited. So, MavenVista Technology Private Limited is a team of procurement process experts and technology professionals. The company delivers intuitive software solution to power your procurement process. With their sole focus on procurement solutions, they are able to consistently develop better insights on challenges faced by the procurement fraternity in dynamically changing business environment. This constant input of knowledge enables them to upgrade their offerings on the sustainable basis to plug cost leakages for their customers through improved procurement decisions. This webcast will walk you through the impact of economic slowdown on business, importance of procurement, outcome of digitized procurement, and the key criteria to begin your procurement journey. With no further delays, I would now like to introduce you all to our eminent speaker of today's webcast, Mr. Suhrid Shah.
Good afternoon, everybody. For the
So,
next 45, yeah, please go ahead, Sajal.
So, Mr. Suhrid Shah, the CEO of MavenVista Technologies Pvt Limited, is a dynamic personality with a diverse industry experience of over 35 years across manufacturing, trading, and IT domains. He has an extensive understanding of procurement processes and challenges faced in this domain across different sizes and segments of industries internationally. Mr. Shah is an expert in re-engineering of procurement process, leveraging technology to deliver simple, quickly adoptable, and practical solutions in this critical supply chain function. So, we will be starting this webinar in next 1 minute, and at the end of this webcast, we will be having a 10-minute Q&A session where you can ask your question directly from Mr. Suhrid Shah. So let's start this webinar. Over to you, Mr. Shah.
Good afternoon, everybody. Over the next 45 minutes, I would like to take through my views why digitization of procurement is a necessity and no longer the luxury. Now, before I talk about the subject, I would like to recall some of the events which the world experienced in 2008. Because of the Lehman Brothers crisis, I think we went into a recession in 2008, which is never felt before. In fact, this crisis, when we look at all the bad news over here, the one question comes up: why did people fail to predict this? Let's look at the scenario now, how things are looking in the world today. We have, on top of this, the trade war happening between US and China. Indian economy, when the earlier crash was happening, where had happened, it was growing at the rate of about 9.5%. Today we are looking at barely about 5%, which is also a questionable growth. Now let's understand that when we are going through this kind of a situation, the question arises in the mind that can this happen again? And are we prepared to face it? Because last time when it happened, the growth rate of India was close to 9.5%. Now is half of that growth as of now. And there are overbearings of the historical crisis, which is what the world is living with. So can we be away from the pains, which is what was felt last time, where India was relatively going through the lesser pain compared to the most of the Western countries which had been facing the issues of the recession. So, what happens if such situations is faced by the world? Well, there will be impact on the corporations in terms of reduction in sales because there is a contraction of demand. When you look at just the contraction of demand, there is also a pressure on prices because buyers are in a better position to negotiate, sellers are more desperate to sell their goods, so it reduces significantly the profits. Now, in order to meet this or to mitigate some of the risk of this consequences, what is the need of the hour? When we look at the need of the hour, the primary thing which comes to mind is a cost reduction. Why cost reduction? So when we look at the normal world situation, in order to build a competitive edge, it is very vital to have the cost under control. You can also offer your services and goods if your costs are under control at a more competitive rate and improve your market share. Let's look at another scenario. When there is a contraction of demand or there is a stagnancy of demand, and when you wish to improve your or maintain your bottom line, how do you do that? The only answer to that is cost reduction. And let's look at the worst scenario. When the crisis like 2008 strikes, how do you think that you would be able to survive through this crisis or manage this crisis more effectively? Is again, cost is a very, very imperative thing which you need to have control on. So, when we look at the cost, there are long term measures like technological innovation through cost effective substitute material, improvement in the production process. All of this takes time. It takes time for you to bring down the cost. What are the low-lying fruits? When we look at the low-lying fruit, is enhanced efficiency in supply chain. And when we look at the supply chain area, procurement is a key cost element in any supply chain. And any inefficiency in the procurement process severely impacts the primary cost, which is a major constitute as material and supplies in any organization's cost. Now, typically, a manufacturing company, I would just take an example of a few of the industry. They spend almost close to 45 to 85% of their revenue in the procurement cost. Now, typically, let's say an example of chemical industry, their net profit margins are between 6 to 7%. So we are talking about every percentage reduction in the cost contributing to nearly 10% improvement in the bottom line. Now let's look at an example that when you want to otherwise improve bottom line by 10%, in such a scenario, you will be required to go through huge amount of investment in terms of expanding your sales network, marketing reach, as well as improving your production capacity. And there is a very limited amount of certainty which you have that when you go through all of this, are you going to significantly improve your sales in order to improve your bottom line? That is a big question. While if you are keeping control over the cost or if you are reducing your cost, there is a certainty and the level of investment which is needed when you have to take measures to reduce cost in terms of reducing the procurement cost through improvement of the efficiency in the function is relatively insignificant. Now, when we look at the efficiency part, that what impacts primarily, what major elements impacts the efficiency of the procurement cost? Well, there is innovation happening all across the world. You would like to identify vendors which are competitive, which are quality conscious, which are service conscious, and which are innovating in order to bring down efficiency. In order to bring down cost through improvement of the efficiency at their organizations. So everybody is constantly looking around. So you want an efficient process for discovering good vendors which can help you to improve efficiency in your production as well as through a better quality of the material and also ultimately bring down the cost. Risk, I think currently we are looking at a very dynamic situation. The whole world is going through a high risk prone issues like today. Let's take an example, a trade war between US and China. I mean, US had a major manufacturing base where a lot of things were being manufactured in China. China was kind of considered as a manufacturing base of the world and still being considered. But from the US perspective, because of various government regulation, overnight there were restrictions or there was increment in the cost if you buy material from China. Now, that is a geopolitical risk. Similarly, there can be risk which is oriented towards suppliers, specific set of supplier where you have a single supply strategy. You need to still look at risk of how to mitigate those supply constraints. You have various risks associated with various suppliers, and you need to rightly determine those risks in order to manage them effectively. Well, I think there has got also a dynamic element which is coming up because the demand changes are happening at a much faster rate than we have seen it till date. In fact, the whole demand is getting more and more personalized or customized oriented needs. And that is where your requirement management becomes an extremely important parameters that you need to get material in time from the right kind of suppliers with the right quality at the right price. And how do you manage this effectively, which is what something which you need to answer yourself. Negotiations. Negotiations are I think, the most powerful negotiations have been there because of the buyer or the negotiator from the buyer side is equipped with the right kind of information in time. Yes, time is the factor which is again plays a very, very important role as far as the negotiation is concerned. So when you're looking at gradually reduction in time because of the dynamic environment which you have to satisfy from the procurement function to meet your organizational need of material and services, you need to ensure that at any given point of time you have a real-time information on variety of parameters in order to design the right strategies, because anybody who's equipped with a logically right kind of information has understanding of supply and demand position in the market more effective than the other part of the negotiator. Once you've negotiated the contract, now it's a question of getting material in time, and you require a whole lot of various other areas, which is what you require to have an insight to ensure that the contract fulfillment is happening in the most appropriate manner. Well, all of this is of no meaning in case if you're not able to maintain your supplier relationship effectively. Your suppliers are in a way a point of innovators. Like a company, a large organization, if they have say 5,000 suppliers attached to them, what way that company can motivate this 5,000 supplier to innovate? And that is if the company is able to achieve that, what is the kind of innovation that those innovation can drive in terms of improvement in the efficiency of the buyer's organization. So it's extremely important. The supplier need to feel confident. They have to feel motivated. They need to have the information in time or in time. All of these are very, very important criteria. Now, there cannot be any efficiency if the accountability of the performance is you're not able to evaluate effectively. Otherwise, it will be perception based judgment which will be coming towards each of the suppliers. So you require a very sound mechanism to evaluate your suppliers, whether their reliability, whether their quality, whether their deliveries on time, whether their price effectiveness. All these parameters you need to evaluate most effectively to ensure further efficiency of those suppliers and in terms efficiency in the procurement function. This is a very, very sensitive function. It's prone to a lot of manipulation. It is prone to fraud. It is prone to mistakes. So you require a complete transparency in this function to be confident to to take desired decisions in time. Security no way can be compromised when you're looking at your data need to be protected, your strategies need to be protected, and I think you require a kind of a central management of all these areas which are very, very securely stored and is well controlled with the access right which are desired. Last but not the least, the most important factor that all of this which you are trying to do is to, without a competent human resources, is almost impossible to achieve anything. I think, unfortunately, I haven't come across many procurement management institutes which is teaching procurement. Yes, there are few, but not very prominent institutes which are teaching procurement management. So that is what is something which is evolving with the experience of people, like all the procurement professionals, and they would like to transmit this understanding down the line. So you require a kind of a system, a process where these competencies is constantly being built among your resources, and that is where they are able to leverage those knowledge in order to bring efficiency in the procurement. So let's look at how these functions are managed in the traditional procurement. Traditional procurement is driven by huge amount of transactional activities, right from the requisition when it is being created, the managing that requirement, ensuring that you get all the desired bids in time, you have all these TCOs being worked out, you are able to negotiate based on the various analytics, and once the contract goes through, then you are required to track the fulfillment of the order, and then lot of administrative tasks like you want to ensure that the vendors are paid in time, all the relevant details vendors would like to have it. So I think it is huge amount of time which is actually being invested in the transactional activities, as per the various surveys which we have seen, that these activities consist of nearly anywhere between 70 to 80% of the time which the procurement people are spending. Now there is a human intervention in case of the traditional procurement, all data which is being manually handled, manually punched, and all follow-ups and all the details are being done over the phone. So there is a human touch which is required, human touch in a sense that human intervention which is required in every step of the process. Considering that you are spending huge amount of time in the transactional activities, there is a question about bringing all data together to take the right strategic judgment. Many of the judgments are based on perception, what the perception which you carry about a specific supplier, about a specific product, what that supplier is providing, about the specific situation in the market which you have a perception, or gut feel, that when you're looking at comparing various suppliers, your gut feel tells you something which is not supported by sufficient data to prove that those gut feel is the right gut feel or it is not appropriate. Besides, I think you have where scattered data all across. You want to look at the spend, you probably would be using some BI tool or some of your ERP function. You're looking at input commodity trends. You would be looking at some monitoring some commodity exchange like LMEs or Bloomberg or any of those exchanges, and various other points of touch base which you would like to have it in order to see that you have desired data points available to take the right judgment on deciding for a contract. Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, still most of the analytics are driven by Excel. I mean, like simple example that we look at comparative, which is being normally made between the TCOs of different suppliers, a landed cost of different suppliers. I think you punch out those in a predefined probably cells in an Excel file, and that means supposing if somebody is buying 5,000 items in a month, he's buying it, he's got about four suppliers, he's got about 10 plants, and there are 20 cost element. You're talking about close to almost about 8 million cells of Excel, which is required to fill up in order to generate this kind of comparison. Now, either it is not happening, in that case, again, there will be a perception which will be coming into place, or if it is happening, even if you're punching in a wrong cell, or if anybody is punching in a wrong cell, it leads to wrong judgment. And I have seen many cases where if the vendors are getting less rate, then naturally they are going to point out your mistake, but I don't know if the case is otherwise. I think this is being a sensitive function, a huge pool of soft and hard copies of the documents you are required to manage in order to meet the compliance requirement of your organizations. And this is also involving mind-boggling level of efforts for every decision which you try to take, and then you try to justify that decision with the whole pool of documents which you are required to manage. Again, these are being at times stored in multiple storage points of data, and all of these leads to extensive internal and external coordination with different stakeholders. So you're not only spending your time when you're asking for that information, the person to whom you're asking that information, he's also investing his time, and so forth and so would be all your external stakeholder, where you're talking to supplier or logistics provider, everybody's investing time, which would lead to huge amount of wastage of time. We will be practically spending this as an unproductive time. So what these kind of things results into? Results into maverick buying, and which is not even known that what could be a potential cost of such maverick buying to an organization. A typical markets research which has been reflecting that this cost could be anywhere between 2% to 22% of the procurement value which you are currently buying. And if you're buying, that means 1,000 crores worth of procurement, it could be anywhere from 20 crores to 200 crores. You don't have visibility on your spend. You want to plan, you want to design strategy based on the spend analysis which you would like to carry out. Maybe spend on categories, spend on items, spend on vendor, all of this, spend on a project, all of this you would like to have a visibility, which is what currently is not possible to have it unless you have a system which brings all of this on a real time. When you're putting up the data manually, I think one question which comes about the purity of the data. And if you're talking about the purity of the data, what happens to the analytics which is generated out of the data which may not have the right purity? The whole analytic could be wrong, and your decision, which if it is based on those analytics, can be wrong. So what happens when your key resource leaves your organization? The knowledge resides in his head. And I think that is where the problem starts, that for an even experienced procurement guy coming from a different organization to pick up the knowledge about your vendors, your items, how your organization patterns are on in terms of your payment patterns, your stocking patterns, all of this, it takes time for that person to build knowledge. And you, the organization, indirectly pays the cost of such lack of knowledge till that person is able to bring up and update himself with the desired knowledge. Well, I mentioned that it's a very little time for strategic thinking, and that is why your risk elements can go up abnormally high. And it's very important that information what you are looking for, it needs to come to you in time. If it is coming late, then you lose the opportunity. And this is what happens if you don't have information coming to you in time. Audit, I think all that what you do, all of this, and the auditor walks in about, say, 9, 10 months, 12 months after you've taken the decision and asking you to justify that decision. You would have some of the documents, but there is no sequential progress available about how this negotiation which has taken place. And I think what we have experienced that most of the time the buyer fails to completely satisfy the auditor, and that impacts his performance. It impacts his credibility. All of this are a serious risk a buyer lives with. Well, I think all what I have reflected is not going to be a pleasant situation for anyone, right? So you would be having a hugely stressful environment to live with day in and day out. Well, there is an absence of the system which can bring all these linkages. There is a possibility of lack of clarity at various stage of the process of the procurement, and this lack of clarity creates lack of confidence in the suppliers as well as the associated stakeholder. So we are talking about end result, huge cost, and chaotic environment. I mean, I'm sure you will be able to align with these two pictures which I'm reflecting here, that many of you could be exactly facing the same situation. Now let's look at the impact on the profit. This is the research which is done through various agencies, which we have collected data from the internet, and we tried to compile this into a chart that information gaps leads to suboptimum buying decisions, and the cost could be anywhere between 2 to 22%. So is the case with communication gaps, at lack of focus on strategy, lack limited new resource available. So I think all the risk element and inefficiency element, if you combine together, typically this broad set of elements results into indirect cost of 2 to 22%, which is impacting your profit adversely. This cost is not known unless you have all the data, desired data available, unless you try to plug all of these points to the best of the possible way. This cost can is expected to be on the higher side, which could be in the range of anywhere from 10% to 22%. And nobody knows about this cost, which could be a mind-boggling number if you're really looking at the overall impact of this cost on your bottom line. So what is required? I mean, all these are problems. So you might be having a question in your mind that, all right, so how do I solve my problems? To put it simply, you don't want to get bogged down with the transactional processes. You want transactional processes to be facilitated, automated to a great extent, so that you don't spend time on transaction, but you spend time on strategic areas, not on unproductive areas. Now, when you're looking at that, when you have time, sorry, when you have time, what would you like to look at it? The next point comes is analytics. You would like to have on a real-time basis analytics available to take efficient decisions. And it's very, very important that you have this analytics which are generated not by you learning some software tools or BI tools, but it should be intuitively generated in order to allow you to focus on the areas which you know best, which is business. So which will lead to efficient decisions. And you would like to see that all what I am doing is compliant to the SOP of the organization. So CAT, this is a very, very important element, which is what you would like to have it in order to see improvement in the efficiency in your procurement. So welcome to digital procurement. That's where The digitization of the procurement process, we strongly believe, can get you over with all the challenges which you have reflected so far. What happens when you are talking of digitization? Internet is the most powerful medium, and the right application when you are putting up, which digitizes your every processes, connects you with all the relevant stakeholder, which could be your supplier, which could be your internal stakeholder, which could be your plant, which could be your logistics provider. All these points are connected to you on a real time, and when they are connected to you on a real time, you're able to get desired information, process that information in the manner in which you desire to have it, and then leverage that information to act upon them in time in order to take the right call for you to benefit your organization. So what is the outcome of digitization? I have given it summary. So I'm trying to get into a slightly functional level. What could be the outcome? You can have an online repository of supplier information which they can update information on their own. If they are bringing in innovations, they can say that, okay, this is what something new which I am doing. If they are bringing new product, they would say, yeah, I think I am now also manufacturing this, or I can also supply you this product. They can give all the technical details online, and without you even worrying about it, you have this information flashed. You probably would also have an information about their inventory levels if they are desired to put those information online. You should be able to have a system built where you translate your parameters of risk assessment into that system. So you would know on a real time that whichever supplier I'm looking at it, what are the risks associated with that. So that would help you to save immense level of time for source development, as well as your supply management, as well as your contract management, as well as for your contract finalization. So again, as we see the dynamic changes which are coming to requirements, you need to understand that they considering the lead time which you require to procure the material, what are the triggers which you should have which will tell you that this is the material which is urgently required, my focus it should be more. So I think it is important that those triggers are part of the digitization landscape, which will tell you every second, every minute, every moment, whenever there is a crisis. You want to also ensure that technical capabilities of the supplier, that whether, of course, it also becomes a part of one of the risks which you would like to evaluate. So once you determine the technical competency of the suppliers, when you get on to a initiation of transactions, you would like to make sure that all documentation which are relevant to the transactional requirement, those are digitized. You don't have to put in any efforts to create any documents. All these administrative tasks, like I mentioned about the landed cost computation as an example, or any other task, all of this are automatically carried out when the supplier puts in data directly onto the system. All when you're looking at that, once you have parameters of the suppliers in terms of cost and techno-commercial parameters, you want to look at run through your analytics that what is the strategy. You also would like to see the market information. What is the demand supply situation looking like? All this information, once you have it in place, you're able to get through the right strategy for decision making. Once all the discussions and decisions and negotiations happen, all of that is being tracked on the digitized map, and then this information can be pushed into generating an order which could be part of your ERP. So this legit digital landscape need to marry seamlessly with your legacy system. So back and forth, all the data from requisition to order to payment to GRN, all these parameters, all this information flows seamlessly between your mother system and your digital platform. Once all of this is established, I think it's a piece of cake because audit is a very easy thing now because you have a complete trail of every single decision which is taken in the organization with reasoning and with situations. So subsequently, you move to the fulfillment of the order. When you're looking at the fulfillment of the order, you have a real-time tracking. Your suppliers will have real-time tracking. You will have real-time alerts. Your suppliers would have real-time alerts about all those things which they have contractually agreed to meet up to those contractual agreement in terms of quality, in terms of delivery in time. All these parameters are being managed through a digital system. Well, when you have this digitized, unquestionable rating of the suppliers can be evolved based on the historical performance of the supplier. So, absolutely critical parameters in terms of ensuring that your supplier rating is most effective. So, when you're looking for historical knowledge, you have complete knowledge about every communication, be it techno-commercial, be it your audit, be it internal stakeholder, all these informations are available to you. And you have the platform where you can most effectively do your vendor relationship management. So let's look at what it results into. Real-time visibility on everything which you are doing or everything which is happening in the procurement function. You have dynamic and relevant analytics with absolute purity of the data. Your SOPs are unquestionably be met without any kind of compromise in the compliance. You have a central repository of knowledge for anybody who is walking out of the organization. The knowledge is still in the central repository, so that somebody new who is walking in simply access that knowledge and can start from the way point where the person had left. You have audit trail of the decisions, so no hassles from the auditors. This is the most convenient way you can work through any part of the world from any time of the world. All informations are integrated, so you look at the wholesome view and you lead this. All these things will lead to supplier satisfaction, considering that he's able to get all desired information, he's able to see the decisions are happening on transparent major manner, he's getting a fair chance of business because his rating is also happening in a very transparent manner. All of this results into immense level of supplier satisfaction. For the top management, from a single point, irrespective of the part of any part of the world the procurement could be happening, you have a single point view of the entire procurement function. Typical benefit of digitization, of course, these are figures in dollars, which has been the survey had been done globally. You reduce your transaction cost in terms of time by almost 70%. Similarly, naturally, it is 70% reduction in cycle time. You improve your compliance by almost close to 35%. Your inventory, because of the lead time shrinkage, cost can go down from anywhere from 20 to 50%, and overall savings you can expect about 5 to 10% in the cost of goods or services which you are buying. Who can benefit? Well, everybody, whosoever is doing procurement, all sides of the company, because they have the same problem, they have the same challenges. This is what Bain and Company says is a globally known consulting company. They said the global 5,000 companies can annually save almost close to $86 billion if they improve efficiency through digital procurement. AD Kearney, one of the most important point to make your organization competitive by having the flexibility of reducing, having the possibility of reducing the cost and make the prices more attractive, or looking at the bottom line on both the counts. I think digitization can unquestionably give you unparalleled benefits. So is the case with various views expressed by various agencies. We are looking at summary of all of this, that the benefit can be as high as 30% in certain cases. Now we are talking about Deloitte, who is talking about the next generation, which he is giving a timeline of about 5 years. And as per the research what they have carried out, 88% of the people think the future is going to be in robotics, and AI or artificial intelligence is expected to extensively support decisions. Now, what is AI? What is artificial intelligence? Is the computer is emulated to think like an expert human being of that function. Now, decisions are happening because of three different parameters, prominent parameters. You see something, maybe data, you hear something, maybe news, and your mind processes this information effectively and leverages your historical experience to incline on a specific decision. Now, this is exactly what the future is expected to be. Now, if you're talking about that as a future, if you do not have the purity of the data, neither the AI or robotics can work effectively. So, what I would like to say, you need to walk before they run. And what Forbes has to say, if your data is unreliable, that is, the purity is not there, it is fragmented where the effort is very high, which is incomplete, you have certain data and you don't have certain data, fixing that is a priority number one. That is where I reflected that you need the digitization which can bring all of this fragmented data into a completion stage, and considering that this data, there is no manual intervention except the counterpart, which could be your supplier who could be feeding in the data, it is a reliable data. There is the purity of the data is very, very high. Analyzing it, right, that is a priority number two, which is what we reflected. You are removing the transaction efforts. Now you are bringing a real-time analytics to take the right decision. So somewhere down the list of priority to fit the machine, these two are the most important parameter. And that is something which is where digitization play a very, very important role. Digitizations helps you overcome your current challenges of traditional procurement. It makes you future ready. So it's a kind of a bridge, which is what is must. And that is where I made my first statement that digitization is a necessity. It's not the luxury. The next question you might have, what do I do to select the right technology partner? You need to get aligned to somebody who understands your pain area, who is aligned to your domain, who understand how procurement is done. Like the procurement, the way it is happening in India is very different than the way it is happening in the West. Like India, most of the procurement for a variety of reasons is either spot or short-term contract. And I think we do not plan 5 to 15 years, which most of the Western country companies would Western the companies located in the Western countries would be planning. So there would be more long-term contract-driven procurement. Now you have different kind of challenges when you are looking at India procurement when you are compared to the procurement, which is the way in which it is being handled overseas. Maybe the supplier's professionalism is lax, so you require some additional insight in order to mitigate the risk or ensure efficiency in the function. Maybe the ethical standards, unfortunately, we are not rated very high, so it requires some additional control in terms of compliance. All of this is important for somebody to understand to before they select the right partner. Very important. Many times the presentation carries huge numbers in terms of savings. I think you know your business very well, and you need to go for a reality check. You need to kind of get a feel that, okay, whatever savings opportunities, what anyone is claiming, is it looking logically correct? Am I getting, I'm looking at digitization of my so many functions, and this is the way it will happen, and this is the way it can be adapted. All of this, can I take a trial? Can I take a POC, proof of concept? That is something which is must for you, because I think the kind of investment of time which you otherwise are required to make is huge, and you can't afford to lose that time, because correcting those situations could be more challenging than starting your journey most appropriately. You need to obviously see that this is a long-term journey you are selecting your partner for, and you have to see that what is the sustainability, what is the future landscape of the partner, and that is where you need to get aligned to that, that okay, this is the guy who is going to be constantly creating value for my organization. No question, when you're talking of any digital technology, you have to ensure that the service provider is ensuring best security standards. Without that, you cannot afford to go to the service provider. And last but not the least, you have to look at evaluating adaptability, because if your users, which users consist of buyers, suppliers, and various other stakeholders, if you think the platform is too complex for them to adapt, no benefits is going to come to your organization. So it's very important to take POC to also determine adaptability. So that is what we do. VENDX is a digital platform. We help companies to digitize their complete procurement landscape. It is a modularized platform, so you can go step by step. You need not jump whole hog. Make sure that you get some success, you get some confidence to take your journey to the next step. All these modules are well integrated, so you can expand your journey as and when you desire. These are the few of the customers in India who have been we have been part of their procurement landscape, and I would be happy to take any other questions which you have um, on the subject.
Thank you, Mr. Shah, for the insightful presentation. Moving to our Q&A session, we have some interesting questions coming up from our audience. So the first question is, how does digitization of procurement results in 100% positive results? Any example? Like state this question with an example.
Sorry, come again.
So the question is, how does digitization of procurement results in 100% positive results? And you can state the question with the help of an example.
Sure. See, I think I would try to look at a very simplistic process that let's take a process of purchase requisition, which is normally generated in the ERP, and the purchase order, which is generated again in the ERP, and the process which is in between. That is, you take up the requisitions, you get the techno-commercial data from the suppliers, you evaluate that, you look at the analytics in the different system, which I have said that it could be market information, it could be input cost parameters, and various other analytics, and then subsequently negotiation, and then look at the generation of the order after you have distributed share of business, goes gone with the internal approval. Now let's look at the digital landscape, what that can do for you in such a case. It can directly pick up the purchase requisitions from the ERP, which is generating it. It can automatically consolidate this purchase requisition based on the line items which are there in the requisition on a material group which you desire to have it. So, for example, you are buying a bearing. So, you have different kinds of bearings, but the supplier is one. So, you would like to give this entire consolidated spend to one single supplier. This entire thing can automatically happen. And it can turn into an RFP in case if you have a item. Bearing is of course not going to qualify for technical bids, but then if you have item which is what is required technical parameters, whatever technical parameter which a requisitioner is given is automatically getting translated into the RFP for a technical bid. So when you send this, and it could be to multiple vendors. So today, if you are talking to 10 vendors, you would be drafting 10 different emails, or you would be doing this consolidation in the Excel file. You will be attaching this Excel file into each of these email and then sent out the email. Now, when the supplier gives quote, he might be giving quote in email, and some of the parameters which you require like insurance cost, freight, GST percentage may not be part of his quote. So you're doing a lot of follow-ups over the phone calls to get the desired information. On a digital platform, on this process, this RFP with all the validation gets created. A vendor gets an email to enter his quotation details in exactly the format which you desire to have it, or his technical parameters with exactly the manner in which you desire to have it, or provide further information on technical parameter. All of this gets compiled. Now you are creating a comparison in order to negotiate with the supplier. So comparison could be on the technical parameters. You would like to have it technical parameters evaluated by your technical people. You would like them to rate them, and you would also like to see simultaneously that how does the commercial comparison go. Now, all of this, when it is available to you, along with the spend, like so far, how much orders I have given to this specific vendor, or for this particular item, when I have bought historically, what prices did I pay to this specific vendor, and what is the price at which I had given my last order, or how did I land up negotiating. So the digital platform also tracks the pattern of negotiation behavior of the supplier. Now, when you are empowered with this information on a real time, then your effectiveness to negotiate with this particular supplier would be significantly large. Now, all this information, once the negotiated contract, you have doing a kind of complete your decision authorization on the platform. So all justification, share of business with all the attachment which is available. Once this is done, once the decision gets authorized, this entire thing gets pushed away into your ERP to generate automatically order. You could be approving a decision on the mobile phone, and the order could be generated in your SAP automatically. Now, this is a reality. This is not a dream. And we are talking of close to 65 to 70% of the time savings in this process alone. There are many, many processes in the procurement, but this is a proven thing. There are time and motion study which has been done. Huge benefits have got translated. There is a direct benefit in terms of resource cost savings, and there is an indirect benefit in terms of improvement in the efficiency of information collation and improvement in design of the strategies, which could be mind-boggling. It's difficult to measure that part of it, but it is logical that this improvement can result into significantly large savings for any organization, running into millions of dollars. I hope I have answered the question to the required question.
Yeah. So, Mr. Shah, we have one more question. So the question says, at VENDX, what have you experienced as the best result in terms of outcomes working with any client for their procurement digitization?
Good question. In fact, you can always visit our website. Our customers are publicly testifying that they have generated almost 62 to 63% savings of time in the processes. They are also publicly testifying about the savings which they have generated from anywhere from 5% to 12%. So this is all available on our website, which is www.mavenvista.com.
So thank you, Mr. Shah, for this insightful presentation. Also, a big thanks to all our lovely audience for joining this webinar. And also, do join us for Asia's biggest C-level finance conference, the CFO Story Forum. It will be a gathering of 120 plus cross-industry finance experts on December 9, 2019 at Courtyard by Marriott, Mumbai. The CFO Story is our flagship program created and designed exclusively for CFOs and the distinguished upper tier of finance in the country and brings along an annual unique opportunity for our senior audience to network, collaborate, and solve the most pertinent business challenges facing the finance function in the country in order to sustain in 2019 towards a stronger 2020 and beyond. For any query or to download the full agenda, just contact us at support@cpoinnovation.com or just give us a call or visit our website that is cfostory.com. So we hope to see you all in the next webinar and also we await to host you at CFO Story Forum. Thank you and have a good day ahead.